I definitely believe that our actions have to follow our words as well. So I've always gone into a business where the business name might be Charlie's Tropic or Target, but I'm owning it. It's Amy's business. And as a leader, that also can translate when you just put your pride into it and your actions follow along with what you're expecting of other people.
Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Build, the podcast where innovation meets collaboration in the world of construction. We bring together thought leaders and industry experts to explore the cutting-edge ideas transforming construction equipment, supply chains, building materials, and workforce productivity.
This podcast is proudly brought to you by Faro, the revolutionary last-mile logistics platform, redefining how high-value, time-sensitive construction deliveries get done. Need it fast? Need it right? Faro it.
Today, we're joined by Amy O'Grady, a highly skilled executive director and leadership strategist with a vast amount of experience in sales, marketing, and team development. With a proven track record of driving multi-million-dollar sales, boosting customer engagement, and maximizing ROI, Amy has successfully led and developed high-performing teams across industries, including HVAC and event management. As the founder of AMYO in the Know, Amy partners with business owners and association leaders to streamline operations, develop leadership strategies, and guide organizational growth. Her ability to inspire teams, optimize workflows, and foster collaboration has been instrumental in her success. Today, we'll dive into the importance of workforce development in the construction logistics industry, how to build strong teams, address the challenges of driver shortages, and optimize team performance for better operational productivity. Amy, welcome to Beyond the Build.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I guess we can start a little bit with you. I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. Your career spans leadership roles across a variety of industries, from sales and marketing to event management and workforce development. What would you say was kind of your inspiration to make the transition from managing events and marketing to focusing on the leadership development side of things and helping companies optimize their workforce?
Well, thank you for asking. I definitely know that we only have an hour, so I won't go too deep into some of my areas of expertise, but I have had a vast career within leadership development. It really started right out of college. I worked for the Target Corporation, and we spent a lot of time just learning how to develop leaders, how to develop other team members within our team, so that way we could work effectively as a cohesive team within the different stores and the different types of industries that we were building out. Back then, we didn't have the Target apps that we have today and everything being readily and accessible. And there was a lot that had to be done with positioning different items within the store to drive sales. And really, you can't do that independently. You need to work as a team with all your other levels within the department. So we really spent a lot of time. That's where it all started for me in my leadership journey. And then from the merchandising world, I was recruited into banking and became a branch manager. And that looked very different back in the day for some mergers that were taking place. Leadership roles kind of transitioned from, typical management of staff to them becoming really sales focused within that industry. So we saw a variety of things taking place between, managing team members and then also driving sales. So from there, I was recruited into my family's heating and air conditioning business, Charlie's Tropic Heating and Air. So that is where I really came into the trades. And in my different opportunities there, I went from marketing, really where I got my feet wet in the industry. And from marketing, I went into operations and really, running the teams, became a licensed contractor myself within the trade. So I got to see firsthand what it was like to go through that educational process within that industry, and then really having a firsthand take on recruiting talent within the air conditioning industry. And I know that's what we're going to focus a little bit on here today. And that strategy of, going out and finding or developing the talent if they weren't already within the skills trade was a challenge. And it's still a challenge within our workforce to uncover that or to recruit into our organization. And, the amount of time I've spent in leadership within running a company, I also, wanted to give back in my community. And I served on different professional boards, the Professional Council for Women in Jacksonville as part of the chamber. And then I also was sitting on my local trade association's board. So I started as a contractor, was recruited in as their executive director once I finished my term as president. And that just really created a love for me for the nonprofit world and executive leadership, having that experience firsthand. So that has led me to now have my own company, Amy O in the Know, and I work with different organizations to provide that leadership service, really from a project level. If they are in need of a full executive director, or they just need some structure within their organization or within their businesses to help them, bring those leaders together or put strategic plans in place for recruitment or retention of their membership. We just kind of dive into it and, put the process in place to really develop those organizations. And I'm so glad I've had all the opportunity I've had within different organizations. I've really, built that skill set for myself to be able to share this with other leaders.
I was curious with the HVAC family side of things. Was that on the commercial side? Was it residential, a mixture of both?
So we were mostly residential. We did light commercial. We're in a beach community, so we do have a lot of condos and different organizations like that, but we mainly focused on residential. And my family's business has recently merged with another organization, and they are really heavy into commercial. So now it's kind of that great partnership of both sides within our town.
Do you feel that has helped you be able to reach more folks for the recruiting piece? Because you talk about with your current role, you're assisting in leadership development as well as recruiting. Do you feel that with the expansion of that company, it helped you all get more access to people that were readily available to work?
I definitely believe that's the case. Really, the story is easy to tell if you've lived it from my experience. And, having gone through the educational curriculum that I, undertook when I took on my license, it really gave me a firsthand look of what others have to go through within that process, still in a career in most cases while they're developing the skill or learning the trade and still, having a full-time job and full family responsibilities that all comes with that. So when I'm able to turn around and explain that to someone that's considering the industry and, things that I did as workarounds that made it possible, then, that makes it a lot easier because they know you are capable of doing it because I am that example. And it's really fun too to kind of take a look at it from even my children's eyes. They grew up seeing this possibility from someone that went to college that had a different career path and then also decided to learn the trade, and what that looked like to make an example of that for them was really wonderful within our family. And then all the things that you can do within your career or the trades once you have that under your belt, the possibilities are limitless. But I really do believe in giving back and being a mentor or an advisor to someone else to, take that leap is really important to me.
Did I hear correct that what your field of study isn't where you ended up?
That's right. So I actually went to school for apparel design and merchandising. So I've taken quite a turn in a different
That is
direction.
not what you would expect.
No, they actually do not offer my major anymore at my alma mater. So.
Well, clearly they made a great opportunity with you, so they didn't have to do it anymore.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
What's one thing, maybe a personal philosophy or lesson that you feel, every team that either you encounter or you're, confident with future teams that you encounter, that you want them to take away? What's a big philosophy or lesson that helps ensure growth and success?
Yeah, I would definitely say it goes back to really the brand image of just knowing where you're at and knowing where you want to go. So that's really what I focus on when I bring on a client is just looking at, what success has brought you to where you're at now, and then what is it going to take to change or to adapt to what's going on within our surroundings or our industries to really continue that success and growth. So I would say, just having that knowledge and uncovering that. And sometimes it takes, really digging in deep into processes, into procedures, into just the everyday basics of what you're doing within the teams and within the organization, and what maybe can be advanced or enhanced upon, and what technologies are maybe out there that we're not utilizing yet.
That brings up a good point with leaders being innovative and working through the possibilities that really attract people, right? And, you talk about with your children and making sure they get to see the opportunities that are in front of them, especially with the HVAC environment that you raised them in and around. What do you feel really attracts people to companies that have leaders that could be strong or stronger? And what do you think you could give advice to for leaders in that sense?
Yeah, I would say people are very attracted to culture. And that is even advice that I give to people that are looking to join the trade is, do your research, go see what their presence is online, follow that company, because people will share who they are, especially in, our time now. We were talking, moments ago about just the influence of podcast and the availability that you can really get to know someone by, listening to previous stories or previous interviews. And the same can be said about an organization. Look for their footprint, and does that align with who you are and your core values? Because even if they don't have a values page on their website, they're going to share that with you in their story. And we all have a story to tell. So I would say that is definitely the place to keep an eye on it when you're, doing your research. But also, people want to be part of successful teams. So being able to share your successes openly. So that way, as you're recruiting either, members or future leaders, that they can see all the things that you're accomplishing. Because there's a lot of work that goes into most organizations. So we have to take a minute and, really share that out, that there are some big wins that come with a lot of the leadership and hard work that gets put in on the backside.
We're in somewhat of a growth mode here where we're doing quite a bit of hiring as we're growing. So we're kind of experiencing, one half of that equation of like, how do we attract, the people who are looking for what you've just described, like because that's the kind of people that everyone wants to work with, right? They want to work with someone who recognizes good culture and wants to partake actively and be a participant in developing a company, whether it's, culturally, ethically, professionally, all the above. Are there any tips that you have for kind of, again, that other side of the equation for folks trying to attract and find those people that align with their values? Maybe their messaging isn't as clear as it should be to where they're kind of bringing those moths to the flame.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you just said a moment ago on development, right? So can they see that there's growth within that organization? Can they see that people are being promoted? Are people being invested in? What is the accreditations or the certifications that people are receiving? Companies that are able to really share that outbound, for the public to be able to witness and see those successes. I think that's important because we don't want to just become stagnant in a position. People want growth. They want development. They want to be part of a thriving team. So making sure that you're vocalizing that and sharing that story, if that's something that's taking place within your company's culture. And then if it's not, maybe that's another conversation too, that what are things that you can change within your company to continue to pour into others and to develop them as leaders.
And Tristan, you have a good amount of experience there. I was just going to pivot to you. I want to hear what you think too.
Well, and when you look at it, right, when we're talking about the discussion format in podcasts and such as you just talked about the virtual format, it really brings together the clarity piece, right? When you're talking about culture and you're talking about really looking into a company's understanding of their mission and their values, it's really important to understand, is it clear? Because if it's not clear, what aspects of it do they really need to focus on, and how do they make it more clear? And when you walk into a company and you really understand that they have a really good base and they have a really good foundation and their folks understand it, you really start to feel it the minute you walk in the door, even from some of the chains that you have that have these simple principles of when you walk in, they say hello. And that's a culture, right? You've built that. But I really feel that you just hit such a prime point that a lot of leaders and especially a lot of executives miss today is your value and is your mission clear? Because it has to be, for instance, can someone that's on the ground floor very clearly articulate the mission and the value of the company, or do they just say, oh yeah, it's over on the wall over there? Do you actually really ingrain it in your folks, and can they recite it to you? I love that you just brought that up, Amy. I think that's a great value point for especially leaders as you're developing and growing, that will help you. So man, that was great. I really appreciated that.
Thanks. And I definitely believe that our actions have to follow our words as well. So, I've always gone into a business where, the business name might be, Charlie's Tropic or Target, but really I'm owning it. It's Amy's business. And as a leader, that also can translate when you just put your pride into it and your actions follow along with what you're expecting of other people. That is one thing one of my first bosses had passed down, is that we always have to inspect what we're expecting of others. And if we're expecting them to be the best representation of our brand or ourselves, then we need to, follow back and make sure that that's being executed. So that is definitely a principle that I live by with developing a team or developing a culture, that, we all need to be speaking the same language and, performing those same actions that follow what our culture and our values are.
Yeah, that's what here at Faro, our number one is servant leadership. So it aligns very closely with that.
When you were sitting as the executive director of the, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the Civica Association Conferences and Exhibitions, is that correct?
Yes, I was part of that association management company before I went independent. So I definitely learned a lot from that organization and the structure and how they support a variety of nonprofits.
So when you're looking through these nonprofits that you all were supporting, what was one thing that stuck out to you, especially going back to the values and the mission? Not speaking about a specific company, but what was one of the things that spoke out to you when you would look at these nonprofits and see the success they had really had, and even through their business practices or their people, what was one thing that really stuck out to you?
I think it's just the endurance. I got to see a lot of nonprofits growth throughout recovering from a pandemic. So a lot of the clients have been very long-term clients for that organization. So just getting to kind of peel back the onion and see kind of where they started within that organization and how they've sustained memberships, how they've sustained still being a thriving organization and nonprofit. So it was really wonderful. And then to see, all the processes that get put in place to keep it efficient and effective within their market that they're serving. So definitely a wonderful experience to really get to see a variety. Because sometimes if we're working within just one industry, we kind of get blinders on, possibly that this is how it's always been done, or this is the way to do it. But having organizations that really go out and find the best products and the best models, and then just work that within different organizations was really great to see.
On the explanation of it, it says discarding tired initiatives. I want to dive into that a little bit, because you just talked about processes that need to be kind of thrown away, and I really appreciate when folks come in and they really value and they look at processes, initiatives, and such, and they work through it. And what do you feel people can do better when they're looking through their companies or looking through even their personnel, right? Because some people are part of the process, right? What can you give some oversight to when people are looking through that? How do you work through that?
I think really you have to take a look at everything. You can't just look at something because you want to improve upon it or because you think it's broken. I mean, you need to even look at the processes that you feel are successful and rework them in some cases to make sure they're still aligning. I think we're seeing a vast amount of change with AI becoming more popular. So products and tools that we might have used to be efficient previously are becoming quickly outdated. So constantly educating ourselves. I always believe that I'm never going to stop learning. Education is so important. I continue to need that for myself. Other teams need it. Other leaders need it. So just educating ourselves. And then maybe there's processes that you've forgotten about or that we've lost track of. So constantly, just reviewing those and making sure they still align with everything that the organization is doing, that it's still efficient in the process, not just something that we're doing because we've always done it. And utilizing your partners or other industries that are having success with other items too. I mean, people are sharing on podcasts. I heard one podcaster say, you can learn anything online, you just have to have the time. So utilizing the strengths of other organizations, follow successful organizations, they definitely leave a trail.
In our industry, we focus a ton in construction, and you have some background there with the HVAC side of things. And it comes down to ultimately, with a lot of our customers, I feel that they so often are kind of set in their ways, to use lack of a better phrase, and that ultimately someone needs to turn a wrench. Like a human's got to get involved and get their hands on whether it's installing or repairing an AC unit, or it's being part of a large multi-billion-dollar microchip factory or data center or something like that. Where's the balance for you from the technical solutions, the innovation, the let's change things and improve and do something different that we've never done before, versus that pullback of, but this has been working, and why should we change something that has worked for us in the past?
That is always the struggle. Definitely when we're introducing change can be hard. Change can be frustrating. We could easily avoid change and then stay where we're at because it's comfortable, right? But we have to be able to just take the opportunity to look and realize, if I invest the time or the effort or the money right now, then what result can I get faster in the future? And, really weighing out the ROI on that. Is it worth the investment? Is it worth, taking a step back, not launching something as quickly as we would have liked to because it needs more time? I'm a big advocate for workflows. I think that goes back into my process and procedure, and wanting to really solve problems. So workflows, I spent a lot of time in different softwares, developing those. And I find it fun and exciting if things can continue to work. And I have the opportunity right now to be kind of on the behind the scenes of an AI product. And it's wonderful just to kind of see it evolving and developing to create a real-time solution for a client of mine and for hopefully many others that, it took effort. It took years of development or fine tuning, and it's still evolving and learning. So that's something to look forward to. And how we react as, the human in the mix is we're guiding it, we're developing it, we're educating it, we're teaching it. So it is going to take on, the direction that we lead it into. So I think that you always have to balance, is this the right direction I want to go, or do I need to slow down, pause, pivot, change? And you can always revisit something, that's the great part about development. You can just recognize that, and as a leader, revisit it if, the first pass didn't produce the result that you had desired.
I think that in this world today, people are so afraid of AI being able to beat them to the punch that they want to throw out unfinished products. And when you talk about the development process, I feel that we really have to focus on the development process and not losing our hindsight of how important that can be, really. And even when working with AI, you really have to focus on, is it giving the experience that you would give, or is it giving the experience that the customer deserves? Because I think at the same time, we really have such an opportunity to evolve and innovate. And there's so many opportunities for us to utilize this in really exceptional ways. But if it's an unfinished product, is it something a company really wants to throw out into the world and be a representative of their company?
Right. And I was even having this conversation with a fellow female technician that's out in the field, and she's training new technicians on troubleshooting. And, when I went for my license, I had, this HVAC 101 book that gave me like 10 possibilities for one problem, right? So I had to work through all 10 to figure out which one was the actual issue within the system. But we can use AI and technology just like that. And if we stop with number one and didn't go all the way to 10 in our discovery, sometimes we can miss something. So AI and technology can be very powerful, but it's all how we're wielding it, like you said, for what's the best result for the customer. And in this case scenario, she said she was struggling because the technician was having callbacks. Well, because he's stopping at one. So you need to teach him to go to 10 and make sure that, the problem that you solved and you fixed the one item, there might have been a precursor or another problem that was creating that issue for you as well. So, really not just stopping with the first response AI is giving us, right? But dive deeper and really wield that power for yourself. But then ultimately, we're intelligent as well, and we have to balance what we're given and make sure it's right for the scenario or the time that you're in. And there's a lot of safety and security that goes into that as well that people really have to balance. And there's, a lot of resources for people to educate themselves there as well. I do not proclaim to be an AI expert. I'm just playing in the same sandbox everyone else is right now.
I feel like we all are. We just integrated some AI training that I'm very fascinated by, and it doesn't replace yet, I believe, the quality of human to human contact with training, especially because the emotional side of things is still improving. It's not there yet. And again, I am no expert in AI myself. We're barely scratching the surface with what AI can do, but how do you feel that, especially when talking about this training aspect with this lead female technician, how do you feel that it's going to be integrated into, let's for instance, go directly into what you're correlated with the HVAC. Do you feel that it's really going to assist in the training, or do you feel it's going to assist more with the work?
I think it's definitely going to assist in the training. Back when I was running a business, I was working with Career Source of Florida on helping to get new employees more AI tools for training. There's a lot of different resources that technicians can use to virtually practice diagnosing a system. And I feel that in this trade, you learn from having your hands on the product. So if you can create that safe virtual environment, because you are dealing with electricity when someone's learning, and the mistakes can have real consequences. So if you can be in a safe virtual environment, our local community college is also really using a lot of different AI tools for their welding program, so they can go into these spaces and really run scenarios that they would maybe get a couple times within a week if they were going on just the problem calls with the senior technician. So it's really giving the power back to the student to be able to teach themselves in their own time and availability, as opposed to having to wait for that on-demand call. So I think the accessibility is the roadblock still, though, now. When you're looking at buying a tool that you need to do the job versus a headset for the training, I think that comes down to being an obstacle for people that are also balancing having a career and going back to trade schools and all of the things that add up.
It really shows where we can improve and where we can integrate, especially going back to the processes comment, right? The processes that can be implemented in order to continuous training, because I think that's one thing you talk about with continuous processes and relooking at innovation and making sure that they're not getting their tired processes. How do you continue the learning curve? And, one thing that I want to ask is, when you were in that position, did you really focus and invest in your people by helping them with continuous training? And what were some of the things that you found to be successful, or found to be maybe even an utter failure if you invested in it?
Right. So when I was working with technicians, the biggest thing is not letting seniority kind of lead the way, right? So there's always new products coming just in technology. So really utilizing your vendor relationships to have them, have the experts come in that know their products and, do the demos for your team. So really making sure you don't let those dates fall off your calendar. So holding, the team meeting, the team training, you might all be tired, you might be in peak season, but keeping that time really secure on the calendars to revisit or introduce a product or a process, and sharing success stories among your team. If they're finding a certain product in a certain climate is producing a better result for them, then sharing that. They work a lot of times very independent, running their own vehicle, so making sure you're bringing everyone back in, discussing trends at different customers' homes, and keeping those notes in that database. But we really have to take a look at everyone individually. So mapping out career paths or continued education training on an individual basis, because everyone might be at a different level. And then certifications, really those courses like your NATE certification, things like that, which some manufacturers really encourage you to be producing with your staff. But it's just a great thing to do anyway, right? Why not be the expert in your field? Why not continue to train yourself, as long as you have the means and the time to do it? So constantly revisiting those items with our team are very important, because you're out there doing the job. You might as well have the continued education and the accreditation that goes along with it.
Are there any tips that you'd give anyone with regards to workforce productivity when you're kind of looking at it logistically, where, so many folks in our industries are affected by skill shortages and high turnover rates? And naturally that affects productivity because you're constantly having to refine people, retrain them, rehire them, bring them into the fold, only to sometimes have them leave for another opportunity, or maybe they weren't what you were expecting. Are there any common, challenges that you're seeing out there, or solutions to some of those challenges with regards to that?
I would say definitely keeping open communication. On times when I've experienced high turnover, sometimes you didn't realize there was an underlying problem or circumstance that led to it, that if you had been presented with it, me would have created another option for the employee, because ultimately they're going to do the same thing just at someone else's. But I think it goes back to company culture. Like, are you really hiring someone that's going to fit within your culture, or are you just hiring to fill the seat? So often people will just hire to fill the seat because they feel pressed. So maybe look at another solution on a short-term basis to fill that void. Maybe give opportunity to someone else to, take on extra hours just in the interim, so you don't just rush hire, is what I would call it. I think that's where we've seen really the most turnover. When you rushed hired, you tried to put someone in the company that didn't really fit with the culture, they don't fit with the other employees, and then it's only a matter of time before one side or another work their way through the process of, no longer being within that company. But I mean, it's hard not to do it, right? If you have someone that has a little bit of experience, it feels so much better to hire that than investing in someone that doesn't have any. But in our case, we've given a lot of people opportunities and we've seen them do great things. And ultimately, you can't handcuff them to your business if you invested in them, but you also have to think about, and you're investing in this trade. You don't want to limit someone if they have the opportunity or ability to go out and, do something else, because there's so many different opportunities for growth here, which I think people don't really see that originally. They just think you have to be a technician and stay there. But, and some people love that. Some people want to be out in the field, and it's a great career and lifestyle for them. So we need all of that. But we just need quite a few more. So I know we're all worried about AI, but we still need a lot of people within this industry.
Absolutely. And it was funny because I was talking to a peer the other day, and he was sharing that he had been asked to step up, and he was questioning. He's never really stepped into the corporate side of the business. He's been in the field really strong, and he said, why, they're making him leave tomorrow. Why wouldn't they allow this person to stay with me and train me? And, it's so funny because that's an investment piece, right? Allowing someone to stay. And obviously there's concerns within companies, but allowing someone to train someone the job they've already been doing versus that person trying to start cold can create an opportunity for that person to not feel so flustered as they're entering into a role that might be very difficult for them, especially when they're promoting from something that could have been, for instance, in the HVAC world, a technician up to a management level position or even a dispatcher position, So it's interesting that you bring that up with the training piece and the investment, because I really think that if folks could understand that spending even a day or two with someone that's been doing the job already, it gives someone even a sense of calmness, a sense of reassurance that they're going to be able to do the job. And how can you do that if you're walking somebody out the door because you're so scared about the damage they can do? Even a day would make a difference. But I really think that investing in folks is going to change the way people want to stay at companies. And it's money, but at the end of the day, are you going to spend more money retraining somebody, or are you going to spend more money on the person that's already there because you want to keep them?
Right. And there is a little bit of bonus too for that on ourselves in our career paths. We need to seek out mentors. We need to, you know, be a mentee or a mentor ourselves to others. Not all of that has to be driven by your company. You have to seek it out to find a person in a position that you aspire to be in, and, have coffee with them from time to time and really ask them what it took to get into that role, what brought them the best success, and then constantly being open to learning, like we discussed before. I mean, you can learn so much from, a peer within your company or even at a competitor's company, sitting on a local trade board. I mean, you're sitting among all of your competitors, but they're happy to share their successes because they want the industry to thrive beyond just their business. And there's plenty of business in the state of Florida for air conditioning, that's for sure.
Tristan, what's been your experience on the construction side with that either peer-to-peer, organic, we won't even call it training. It's like, you're just learning by osmosis, or because you have a relationship with this person, or having like kind of a true to form mentor where it's, someone that has a lot more experience than you, is usually, older and has just been around. Have you experienced a lot of that? And do you feel that that trumps traditional training? And is there a way to foster that in a way that doesn't just rely on kind of it happening just by chance?
It's a great question. I have experienced a lot of different training styles. One of the most difficult, but probably the most exceptional, was the principle of they're always there. It doesn't matter. They'll answer your phone call 100% of the time. They will be there. They will be available. It doesn't matter. But 9 times out of 10, when I would call, they wouldn't give me the answer. And it was extremely frustrating. But when I finally sat down with this individual after many years of training with this individual, and I went, what the heck? Like, come on. Why were you making this so difficult on me? And this individual looked at me and they said, do you see where you sit today? And I said, no. And they explained to me the situation of where it had led today. And they explained how it created a resource pool by doing it through inadvertent avoidance of answering the question. And that was so extremely frustrating. But JP, the amount of different environments that people try to train, it's different for every single person. It's different for yourself. It's different for Amy, and it's different for me. And I think one thing that I've appreciated throughout the training aspects of the life in construction, the life in management, is when the trainer actually takes the time to get to know the person. Not every single person is the same, and not every single person is going to learn the same. But at that moment in time, that was really what I needed. Now, today, would I appreciate and respect that training as much? Probably, but would it help me as much? Maybe not. You wouldn't know, right? And I think that especially when Amy speaks about, a technician, taking the time to just be a part of that person's training, be available. It's so simple. It's such a simple concept of being available for that person, because at the end of the day, the more you're available in the beginning of their training, the more they're going to learn to get through the process faster. And again, create the processes, create the timeline, allow them to learn and allow them to go on their own. The questions will eventually stop and they will eventually become more in-depth questions, which will help you.
I love that answer. I had my favorite professor in college on day one said, "You're going to do a group presentation, but I'm not giving you any of the rules. Who goes first?" And so I'd never been in a college course before. I'm like, is this normal? What's happening here? But let me tell you, it raised the bar. You didn't have like, did we have to have PowerPoints? I mean, you had like every walk of life in these presentations, and they were brand presentations that we put together for a merchandising class. And I think had he given us the answer or the rules, it would have lowered the bar. And I think sometimes as leaders, we can get lost in feeling like we have to have the exact plan or the exact answer. And we can limit our teams by not letting them come to that realization on their own. Because how I do something can be very different from how you would do it. And then it might not be as successful. And then where does the blame go? The blame goes on the person that gave the rules, not the one that uncovered the strategy and made it successful. So as a leader, I would get frustrated because I sometimes would not get an answer from a staff member. And a coach once had told me that, well, if you give the answer and it goes wrong, then you're the person that holds the blame. So let them make a mistake. Failure is part of getting to success. Not everything we do is always polished or always perfect. So we need to develop and grow in our leadership style as well. And, take the feedback from your staff and from your team if something's not working well for them or they're getting frustrated, and strategize together. Like you said, and not everybody learns the same way. So what might have been effective with one really strong team member isn't going to work for the other one, because we all learn differently and we all develop in our different timetable. But really being able to pause and look at everyone's strengths individually, I think, is important.
What is it with these marketing professors? Because one of my favorite professors in college was my marketing professor, and same principle. He gave us a project and said, you got to figure out how to do it, but didn't. It was a multi-month project and wouldn't tell anyone how anyone else was doing, and you had to make a figure of number. And it was so invigorating, but it created such a cool environment because you were trying to talk to people and figure out their strategy without giving away your strategy. It's funny when you create an environment like that for people to really learn and grow, that it's the same principle in business, right? You have to understand how people are going to grow within their peer group, as well as with the leader still being at the helm and guiding them through it, maybe without clear direction, because that's the principle behind the training. So training is such an aspect and an investment that I feel people could put always more financial resources, personnel resources, as well as process resources to the bottom line.
I wanted to ask one question regarding what you see in the future. Is there, Amy, any shift or trend in the workforce development side of things that you're most excited about that you haven't already mentioned?
Yeah, I think just the continuation of having access to, different resources. I think AI is going to bring us a lot closer to that in the tools that we can use. I get the pop-up ads that say, your kids are starting businesses with all these new AI tools. And I just laugh because during the pandemic, my son had started his own like streaming channel and website and was selling like sweatshirts to his friends. And I was like, it really takes a lot of the obstacles out of the way, So, the possibilities I think can be endless, but I can't wait to see what companies are going to do to, really make it better for, aspiring technicians or students to, take down those financial barriers or time barriers for our industry.
Well, awesome. It was really a pleasure speaking with you, Amy. I'm glad that you were able to take the time with us, and thank you as well, Tristan, for all of your insights today. Is there anyone that you think we should interview next, Amy? Anyone in your pool that could be interested?
Oh, well, I will definitely send you some names. I think I have quite a large pool right now with very influential leaders with in the trades, and then also now I have a realm of other previous staff and peers within the nonprofit world. So leadership is definitely at the forefront in both of these groups that I've been part of here recently. So I'll definitely think on that and share something over. And I really appreciate the time today. I'll definitely be following the podcast more frequently. For sure, because I enjoyed, just the conversation around leadership that, I'm so passionate about and have had a wonderful career in. So it's always easy to talk about something that you love.
Well, thanks everyone. And we will see you all next time.
Sounds great. Thank you, Amy. We appreciate your time.
Well, everyone, that is a wrap for today's episode of Beyond the Build. We took away some real valuable lessons and insights, and I hope that you did as well.
If you enjoyed this episode, we would ask that you subscribe so you can never miss an update. If you're a thought leader looking to innovate in the construction industry, let's talk. We'd love to connect and hear your thoughts.
You can find Beyond the Build on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, plus anywhere else that you listen. And if you'd like to learn more about how Faro is changing logistics in the construction industry, please visit our website at faronow.com.
Once again, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, be humble, serve others, and make an impact.